Well, just because we may have put our gardens and our landscapes pretty much to bed for the winter doesn't mean that we can't enjoy them all winter long. And one of the great ways to enjoy our landscape during the winter months is to attract birds. Bird watching is a wonderful hobby, and it's a good way to enjoy the outdoors and our gardens, even though it's not the growing season. Now, there are several things that you can do to attract birds to your landscape, and the three primary things that you need to do is provide them with food, water, and shelter. And we're going to go over a few of the plant materials that you can use to provide all three of these things for your birds. Now, first, where plant materials aren't providing the water for our birds, we can provide that if we don't have a stream or a creek nearby. If you have a water garden, that's a good source of water for birds. You can also provide them with a bird bath. And it is important during the winter as well as during the summer to keep that bird bath clean and full of fresh water. Also, if you use a heater in your bird bath to keep the water warm so it won't freeze, you want to make sure that the water does not get above 40 degrees. So check that out and make sure you've got clean water at a proper temperature if you're supplying it in a bird bath. Now, the plant materials that we can use, usually we think of providing food for birds over the winter time, but if you provide plant materials for your birds year-round, you'll have a better selection and you'll have a wonderful time of bird watching during the winter. You can provide plants that have fruit during the summer, such as grapes, and anybody that's grown fruits in their garden knows that those are great candidates for bird food. You can provide some of those just for the birds. You can also provide nectar-producing plants, but you need to have a selection of plants that provides food for them throughout the fall and winter too. And we've got a classic example right here. The pyracantha filled with our berries is a wonderful food for birds during the winter. Now, not only is pyracantha a good one, but also hawthorns. You can use a lot of the different hollies. Now, even our southern magnolias are providing food for birds right now because you don't see them for very long, but they have red fruits in those cones, but the birds eat them up very quickly and they're gone, and that's providing food for the birds right now. Now, this brings up a point. You need to provide trees and shrubs that will have fruits and berries on them in the fall and also through the winter. Some of them are eaten very quickly by the birds, such as the southern magnolias, while others persist on the tree until later in the winter. Now, the reason for this is some of them are less palatable to the birds until they've frozen and thawed for a few times. And after that, they're ready for the birds to eat. An example of this would be the crab apples. Those persist on the tree until they're palatable to the birds, and then the birds start eating them later in the winter when they've run out of other food to eat. So provide a mix of berries, and you can tell those trees and shrubs that have berries later on in the winter, you want to have some of those in there for your birds. Now, as we're looking at the pyracantha here, I want to point out something else. This provides not only food, but also some really good shelter for the birds. You can see we've got these lovely thorns here, and while we don't enjoy these are great for the birds because this can provide some shelter. They can get away from predators by getting back in this mix here, and a cat wouldn't necessarily like to be up in all of those thorns. So these provide very good shelter for birds. Now, another plant material that we need to provide with the mix, in addition to our berried type plants, would be the conifers. Now, conifers include junipers, also our pines, cedars, yews, any of those kind of needle leaf evergreens. Now, conifers are great because they provide very good shelter for the birds, especially during the winter. They don't lose their leaves, and so this can actually provide a barrier to winds, snow, and birds can get back there inside. They also can provide protection from predators because they can't be found. And if they have berries, they can also provide a food source. So add conifers to your mix of bird attracting plants. Now, right here, we've got another good addition to the mix, and that is an acorn tree. Trees that have acorns or nuts are very good because they provide food and good nesting sites for birds. Now, right down here, we've got some acorns, and you can see as they start to crack, the birds can get in there and pick out the meats. Now, you could even help them out a lot by going out and cracking a few of these for the birds so that they can eat. Now, acorns are good, also pecans and walnuts are all great trees to have in your yard if you want to attract birds. Not only are trees and shrubs good, but also ornamental grasses are a very vital component to attracting birds to the landscape. Now, not only are They pretty in the winter with these seed heads, but seed heads, some of them can provide food for birds. Also, the ornamental grasses, if they're not mowed, can provide shelter for ground nesting birds during the summer months. So, ornamental grasses are a very good component to include in your bird attracting wildscape. Now, there is a lot of literature out there to help you in attracting birds to your landscape, and there's actually a fact sheet put out by OSU that's available, and you can get this at your local county office, and you can also find it on the OSU Extension website. It is available for you to download from your computer. Also, there's a very nice brochure on attracting not only birds but wildlife and backyard conservation that is available from the USDA. And this has sections on not only attracting wildlife to your landscape, but also a lot of good conservation practices that they've pretty much translated from farming practices to your own backyard. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service also has a great website and tip sheets available on attracting birds to your landscape. So think about planting so that you can attract birds to your landscape year-round and enjoy them through the winter months.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.